Good evening. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay. As you're probably well aware, this past town meeting, there was $300,000 appropriated to continue engineering studies for the public safety facilities. That vote was very close, 51% to 49%. We felt that we needed to hold an input session from the community to review where we've come from, where we're at today, and what some of the options are available to us. The hopes from tonight is we will get some valued input from you, the citizens. From that point, this committee will meet on Monday to discuss the input we received, and then we're hopeful for a brief presentation to the Board of Selectmen next Wednesday about the outcome of this meeting. Then we can work on securing our architect, engineering firms, and moving forward with some form of a project in 2023. I'd like to introduce the members of the committee. I'm sorry that the sun breaking through is kind of washing this, but you all have the presentation in front of you, I hope. So this has been a living committee. There's been some changes since it was started in 2018. The committee membership today is made up of Luke Freudenberg, Selectman. Luke. Mark Livy, Captain of the Police Department. Mark. Bob Lohman, Citizen and Budget Committee member. Nate Nichols, Deputy Fire Chief. James Pinio, myself, Town Manager. Dean Rondo, Police Chief. Kevin, I'm not even going to try to pronounce your last name.
Sanzenbacher.
Sanzenbacher, Citizen.
Kevin S.
And also retired Police Chief, correct? Bob Tuffer, Budget Committee member and Citizen, and Thomas Dottie, Fire Chief. All of our documents are on the town website, and this presentation will be going on the town website hopefully tomorrow, as will the recording of this session tonight, and we'll see what we can make happen this evening. So one of the things we've done is we reviewed the 2019 master plan. I color-coded a couple items in here. The first one in yellow, resolve the police, fire rescue facilities needs concerning current or alternative locations in either a unified or separate housing. Number 4, fund and respond to the feasibility study for Fire Rescue Department substation. We're still actively working on options for the substation, which may include not having one. That's more work on our end to be done. In order to resolve the police and fire rescue right now, we went through in 2018, we did a study of the existing facility, which we'll get into in a couple minutes, and we identified some problems with that for a standalone facility for public safety assets. One of those items was the price tag. At that time, estimated construction for 2021 was $12.5 million. And it was going to be very challenging with the phasing because we just simply can't take the fire apparatus and put it outside. We can't take the police evidence and just put it outside. There's processes to retain these things. Also in green, you'll see a couple of interesting items that we'll talk about a little bit and some of the options we have. Fund and respond to feasibility study for reuse of the electrical generation building on Laner Street, and same thing for the community center on Laner Street. When we went through the 2019 master plan, it discussed the current facility, the shortcomings of them. Basically, at this point, our assets, our manpower are busting at the seams in the existing facility. There's a lot of code deficiencies within the facility, and it's not conducive for smooth operations. The substation, the building is in poor condition at best. We don't believe that there's any saving the building. If there's something that's going to go there, it'll have to be a new facility. And this just summarizes the community facilities chapter and reiterates the goals for police, the goals for fire, the goals for the fire department substation, and the electric generation building in the community center. Just reiterates those from the master plan. So tonight we're really going to go over 5 separate options that we've got on the table. Option 1 is fire department and PD to remain on the South Main Street site. Option 2, build a new police facility on North Main Street at the water tower site. Fire department will remain at the current location. Option 3, police department relocates to the fire department substation site. Fire department remains at the current location. Option 4, PD would go to Laner Street. The MED building and the community center would both be torn down, and we'd build something similar to the North Main Street design. Fire department would remain in existing location. Or we keep the MED building, remodel it, tear down the community center, and put a modest addition on to that building. I will note 4 and 5, we've really done no engineering or architectural work to determine any costs with that at this point. Work completed to date. So in 2017, David Owen, the town manager at the time, put an RFP out to evaluate the existing public safety building. We received 9 submissions. We reviewed those. We interviewed the various, we actually interviewed, I believe it was 3 different architects. We picked LaValle Bresninger as our preferred architect, and we had a kickoff meeting in January of 2018. Committee at that time consisted of David Owen, town manager, Dean Rondo, police chief, Matt Sullivan, town planner, and myself as the fire chief. The tasks that were created from that was a space needs assessment. What we did is we worked with the architect. We looked at the requirements based on different certifications and requirements for different agencies. The chief and his department went through their space need requirements for a police department, and they put them into blocks based on square footage. And then we went through the fire department, did the same thing, created a block for square footage. And then we put it together to see what we could create for a building based on square footage. We had an existing conditions report which came back. Some good news about the existing building, some bad news about the existing building. And the final deliverables were a space needs assessment, provide hard and digital copies of the report to the town, and provide a presentation to the Board of Selectmen and the community. Task 1, the initial space needs assessment came back with a requirement of 33,000 square feet. We were actually able to take that down to 29,000 square feet for the final delivery to the community in 2018. The makeup of that was 2,700 square feet of common area, 8,384 square feet for the police department, 15,547 for the fire department, and 2,300 square feet of facility supports. We additionally did some assessment of parking Parking was initially determined that it should be 44. We were able to get that down to 34 by the time we were done. Task 2, the existing conditions report. They did a site survey. The buildable area on the site was 54,000 square feet, plus or minus, with some and it's within the setback requirements. Building was in reasonable condition. However, there's no elevator, and there's definitely a need for corrective design to meet modern standards and current codes. Structure cannot be expanded up, but it can be expanded laterally. And the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing are all deficient based on today's code, so those all would have to be taken out. So the administrative section of the building needs to be essentially gutted with a new layout, rebuilt. And we did do a cost-benefit analysis of a tear down versus a rebuild, and it was essentially a wash. Whether you tear the whole building down and start from scratch, or you gut it and use the existing exterior structure. Apparatus bay minimally needs a new floor. That will have to be dug out, new materials put in, and new concrete poured. Again, the challenge with that is the interim location for fire apparatus, equipment, and evidence for the police department. This is what the concept would look like. The existing building. Not going to be able to see it with this pointer, but the existing building would stay. The current apparatus bay would be torn down. That would be put on as an addition to the building, which would house most of the police. Thanks, Chief. And this would come at you in a phased approach. So phase 1 would be the rebuild of the administrative offices right here. And then we would build the apparatus bay, tear down these apparatus bays, fire apparatus would move in, and then this construction would take place here. One of the real drawbacks to this is you've got fire apparatus, which will be leaving, you've got police apparatus, which will be leaving, and it's the same common entrance for the general population coming in to conduct day-to-day business. This is one of those issues which made this site extremely challenging. Here is a picture of what it potentially would look like. Not a terribly attractive building, but it's in line with what is there. Consistent construction, but it does present some challenges. That site is 1.9 acres, plus or minus. All the architects we've spoken with, a combined facility with the needs of this community and the departments really should be on a 3.5 to 4 acre site. We'll get to that shortly, but think about that, 3.5 to 4 acres. That's really challenging to put that type of property together for us to build a standalone facility with the infrastructure needs. Today's price tag is $16.2 million for that project. In 2018, it was estimated in 2021, $12.2 million. All the operations of everything, police, dispatch, fire, are all going to be disrupted during construction, and it leaves no room for future growth. Once you build it, you're essentially locked there permanently. Here are the two comparable budgets from 2018, which again, the estimated cost of construction in 2021 was just over $12 million. And then this fall, or last summer rather, we had this revisited, and the price tag came in at essentially $6.2 million for a 2023 construction. So if we were going to look at this option for 2023, you're looking at a bond that's going to come in front of you for at least $16 million. So what does that translate to? A $16 million bond, we took and we ran these numbers with the bond bank to get an estimate of what it would cost us. Simple math with these numbers, a $300,000 home, you're looking at $180 on your tax rate for a 20-year loan. If we did a 30-year loan, that same $300,000 home would be $168. So that 30 years really doesn't pay to do that. You're saving about 2 cents on the tax rate, and you're extending it out an additional 10 years. So for all intents and purposes, we'll probably go with a 20-year, which also gives a lower interest rate versus a 30. So we completed that in 2018. We talked about what we had to do next. We began to evaluate some options. Option one was to look at a standalone police station. Requires 1 acre minimum of property. We felt that that was something that we could probably figure out. We looked at a standalone fire station. Some of the requirements for a standalone fire station were municipal water and really needed to be on a 3 acre lot. And the police department would remain at the existing facility. We didn't have a whole lot of luck finding a 3 acre lot where municipal water was accessible. An entirely new location for a police facility, again, which is 3.5 to 4 acres for a complete safety complex. We simply had a difficult time finding that. We did have one option that would work for us, and we'll talk about why that was ruled out in a couple minutes. So from that point, we took and compiled a list of all town properties. That was one of the directives that some of the selectmen wanted. They wanted to evaluate all the town properties that we own and see what we could do. We evaluated some other prime sites, that being the what's known as the Citizens Bank site on Center Street for a new public safety complex. It was determined not to be conducive to a fire station due to the angle of approach and departure of the fire apparatus. We looked at a standalone police station at that location. It was an excellent option for us. We also looked at the intersection of Center and Pine Street, also known as the Zimmerman lot, and it actually turned out to be an excellent site for a police station. But there's some resistance to want to sell that to that property to the town. Then we looked at the North Main Street, that's a typographical error on my part, North Main Street water tower site for a standalone police station. And what we've heard from the community to this point is that they're less than impressed with that location. So that's part of the reason why we're here tonight, is to hear from you, the citizens, about what this is about. So, bank building, Center Street, it's 1.5 acres, 2-story existing building. There are some traffic challenges. The existing square footage of that building is 12,156 square feet. For a turnkey police station, it really requires a 2,000 square foot addition. It's town water, town sewer, communications all there. Again, was determined not to be feasible for a fire department due to the angle of departure and approach of fire apparatus on the hill. And as we put the space programming to it, the building was sold. So we were actually doing some work on it, and then it became unavailable to us. Here's the site again, just to give you an idea of some of the work that was completed on it. And here is actually some programming, all those little squares we talked about. These are those little squares broken out and laid out for the police department. It actually worked out splendidly as an option. However, it was purchased before we could really get beyond this point. Then we looked at the Pine and Center Street or Zimmerman lot, 1.1 acres. It actually turned out to be a very good site. Again, it's got town water, town sewer. We looked at it from two different perspectives: a one-story building, which was 12,586 square feet, footprint of approximately 152 by 100, and a two-story building, which would have turned out to be 13,900 square feet, approximately 112 by 100. Water, sewer, communications all readily available, good parking, good access and egress for the police doing their business, and unfortunately, we weren't able to purchase the property. So we then looked at Filter Bed Road as a committee. The location is near the wastewater treatment facility, town water, town sewer, communications. However, it was ruled out for a few reasons. One, it's not a through road, which was concerning. It places police, fire in a residential neighborhood and doesn't give them great access to be able to get to anywhere in town without it being a through road. And there's also a desire for this to become a municipal parking lot. But the main thing here was the only way out to service the citizens of town is you got to go through a lot of residential areas on Filter Bed Road. So that was why that was ruled out. We discussed a piece of property on Pine Hill Road between the SAU building and the PSI Plastics. It's a town piece of property that we own. It's a fairly large-sized piece of property. However, when we looked at it, site development was going to be challenging because it's all poorly drained soils, and there would be a lot of site development with the tree removal that would have to take place. And the other thing that was problematic with this one was when you took the propane facility for Eastern Oil right here, and you put a large leak onto that over the hazmat software, it put the facility right smack in the area that you would have to be evacuating. Therefore, it didn't seem to make a lot of sense to put a dispatch center with police department employees or fire department employees in that location. If there's a major leak, we're going to have to evacuate the property. So that's how we got to North Main Street. This was a piece of property that the town owns. On the town tax map, you can still see that we have the water tower identified on it. So we actually had Norway Plains come out and do a site survey, produce an existing conditions report, and it came back favorable to be able to put a police station here. So we went forward, we worked with the architect, with the programming that we had developed, and we looked at, can we build a single-story building here? Came back that we really couldn't, but we could do a two-story building. So we went through a series of renditions and came up with a space programming. This is kind of what the building would look like, with some parking for staff and some parking for citizens. Again, it's a 1 acre site. The building is approximately 13,500 square feet. Dimensions about 70 by 100. Couple of complications on this site due to its elevation. It would likely require a fire pump for sprinkler system, and it would also likely require a pump system for the wastewater. However, water, sewer, and communications are all readily available at the location. We have identified some site issues with infrastructure that's still in the ground for the water tower. However, that's in the back of the facility property, and it would be covered up with the parking lot. We would, for all intents and purposes, try to move most of it, but it wouldn't impede the construction of the building. And the nice thing about this conceptual plan that we've put together can essentially be used on another piece of property. If we can come up with another piece of property that works, we may be able to utilize this particular footprint for another site. So this is kind of a layout of the building. This would be the first floor. It has a sally port for law enforcement bringing prisoners in. It's got secure access to their booking area. It leaves room for their dispatch center on the first floor. It has a training and conference room for the police commission with a small kitchenette. And then there's significant amount of evidence storage with a variety of different rooms for storing valuables, cash, weapons, etc., narcotics, and a complete processing room for that. Also has mechanical, janitorial, and trash receptacles, all on the first floor. An entry vestibule. That entry vestibule would be open to the second floor. So that's kind of the layout of this first floor of the building. Second floor of the building is where some of the administrative staff would be located. Chief, captain, there'd be a small meeting room there, copier supplies, and a waiting area for people looking to visit with the administration. There's an interview room, investigative file storage, agility room, break room. It's also got bunk rooms, which, you know, when law enforcement is doing a turnaround or they're on for a long shift or an emergency, they need a place to be able to recoup if they have to do a quick turnaround. Staff restrooms and locker rooms. Police prosecutor, and again, there is some area for law enforcement weapons, which they would need for special operations. This is kind of a rendering of what it looks like. As you can see, the second floor cantilevers over the building, so you've got kind of a entry into the area where you can be protected a little bit from the weather. Again, this is just a basic rendering of some trees. I know that there's been some question about the accessibility of this and the line of sight. We frankly have not studied the line of sight. That's what tonight's about, and if we get the direction that people seem to want to go this way, then that line of sight issue will be discussed. Different view of the same facility. Price tag for this particular project is $6.6 million. To give you an idea of what the payments on a $6.6 million project would be, for a $300,000 home, a 20-year bond, the first few years would be $75 on a $300,000 home. If we did a 30-year bond, it would be, the first few payments would be $69 on that same $300,000 home. So again, it makes sense to look at that 20-year schedule versus the 30. Then we looked at putting the police department out at the fire department substation site on Route 109. There's some advantages and disadvantages to this. It's a 1.2 acre site, so it meets our square footage needs. We did reach out to Wentworth Watershed Association about the abutting properties to see if they would be interested in either A, selling a property, B, doing a boundary line adjustment, and there was no interest in that. We believe that this site would be compatible with either the North Main Street design or the Pine and Center Street design. Issue here is no municipal water or sewer. Site work would require demolishing the existing building, removal of the existing septic, and most likely there would be a fire department apparatus bay incorporated into this project if we were to go this way. As far as this site is concerned, I think the fundamental question here for the citizens is, do you want your police department located in the downtown corridor, or do you want them located out of town? The chief will tell you that he doesn't have a terrible problem with it because his officers are on the road for the most part, so it doesn't really concern him one way or the other. And when we get into the question and answer period, if you have questions for the chief specific to that, we'll let you have the opportunity to speak to him. Laner Street. So there's been a lot of discussion about Laner Street. If you recall, we just last fall had a charrette on Laner Street. We talked about some of the options for some of the things going on down at that location. We've also done a study on the municipal electric building. That's going to be discussed Wednesday night with the Board of Selectmen. But we're really looking at two options here if this is where the people want to put a police department. Either A, you tear down both buildings and you build a new facility, both the community center and the MED building, or we salvage the MED building, remodel it, tear down the community center with a modest addition for being able to meet the square footage needs of the police department. This project would definitely capture a boatload of projects in a singular project, but again, we've done no engineering and no architectural work to this point on this location. Again, this building was identified in the 2019 master plan. Couple of interesting statements about it. Given its walkable access to downtown and public recreation site, as well as newly constructed nearby parking, this lot should be considered for future use by the town. Well, here we are talking about it. Public comment supports reuse of the structure as a teen center, senior center, or a generational community center, or to use as a retail space should also be considered. Well, we're here talking about it as a potential police station. 2020, a group of Girl Scouts came in with a petition warrant article asking for $25,000 to perform a feasibility study of the building. You, the voters, approved that. They've come through and they've done some wonderful presentations of what they'd like to see happen with this building. We're just here asking you tonight to consider this as an option. We've spent that $25,000. We've got a report back. The building has got some problems. We've got additional information that we received in the recent days, literally, that we'll be discussing with the Board of Selectmen on the 15th regarding what it would take to either A, tear the building down, or to rehabilitate the structure. Right now, the roof has got significant leaks. We are having problems with water infiltration in the building, which is compromising the masonry. There is some building contaminants, asbestos, lead. However, the PCBs are within EPA regulations, so that's not a terrible item at this point. Regardless of what we do, I think the concern is once we disturb things, what are those contaminants going to look like? Laner Street, again, this is the community center, which was previously the fire station before we moved them up to South Main Street in 1974. Again, one of the quotes from this, given its walkable access to downtown and public recreation sites as well as newly constructed nearby parking, this should be looked at and considered for future use. Public comment supports demolition and reuse of the site as a general community center. So that's from the 2019 master plan. Again, and I'll get into it momentarily, some of the information that was discussed in the charrette. So this is a view of the community center and the MED building. I'm not that great with my phone, so I really couldn't do a panoramic picture. So I took two pictures and put them together. This is basically kind of what you're looking at back there. You know, it's not terribly attractive. The white building is the community center, which is in terrible shape. We've got to make a decision what we want to do with that in pretty short order. And as well, we've got to decide whether we're going to invest some money into the MED building in very short order to save it for the future. Here's a picture of the front of the two buildings. You know, the electric building, it is a beautiful building. It's very attractive in the area. The community center, people have different opinions about it. I have mine, and I won't express it, but I think you can probably read between the lines. So those are those two buildings. This option is really the only other option we've got to be able to place our police department in the downtown area, other than putting them on North Main Street or locating them at the existing site. This is really what we're looking at if we want them in the downtown area. This is it. The question becomes, can we fit a police department on this site? Here's, again, a tax map showing the Glendon Street parking lot, and that's essentially a 21,000 square foot area. So can we place a 13,000 square foot facility inside of that window? If you look at the next page, again, 21,681 square feet available based on that square that I drew backing up to the Glendon Street parking lot. The North Main Street square footage of the first floor was 6,590 square feet. So yes, it will fit in the footprint of that piece of property. And the way the property tapers, it makes sense to have a two-story building there. A single story, similar to Pine Street, would be 12,000 square feet. So could a single story building be put there? It could be, but I don't think it makes a lot of sense based on the contour of the land. Sewer, water, communications, all readily available. Detainees and the police officers from Glendon Street parking lot. And this project solves a multitude of problems in a singular project, and really could beautify the area. Again, no feasibility studies have been done on this, so we don't know what's going to happen when we dive into that. So really, I think we've got two options there, and these are options 4 and 5. Raise both buildings and build a completely new facility. Again, the square footage works, or you rehabilitate the MED building, tear down the community center, construct an addition onto the MED, and see if that can work for us. I think that's a viable option. So the question becomes, if we do this, if we go either of these options, what do we do with the fire department? So the chief has been working with the architect, and essentially we would be looking at a two-phase approach to the fire department facility. Phase 1 would involve rehabilitating the administrative offices and rebuilding the apparatus bay floors. This is a schematic of the first floor. A lot of the assets would remain exactly where they're at, but it would certainly give them a better footprint of operations. It also would take into consideration decontamination, so that the staff is in an area which they're not living with those contaminants, and provides for future growth. Also takes care of some accessibility issues. Again, this would be a complete gut to that building and start from scratch on the inside. Second floor, again, this would basically be living quarters for the staff, and it would be set up in such a manner that we would be able to do phase 2 at a later time. This would be phase 2. Phase 2 would essentially add on an two apparatus bays to the side of the building and provide a straight shot toward the street, and it would get them back to the square footage that they require for future growth. This is kind of what it would look like when it's all said and done. You know, does this look any better than the previous option? You know, I think it looks a little better. I think it definitely is a better, from a safety standpoint, for being able to access the street without citizens using the same entry as fire apparatus leaving facilities. And you would also have a small garage built on the back of the facility for storage of ancillary equipment. You can see that small garage right there. This particular project, phase 1 is estimated at $4.2 million. So if you were to add up the 4.2 and the 6.6, that brings you to about $10,800,000. So what does that mean? You look at the bond schedule. This particular project, tied in again with, if we were to do North Main Street on a $300,000 home, would be approximately $120 a year increase on your tax rate. A 30-year note, that same $300,000 home would be $111. So again, it doesn't make sense to stretch that out that additional year, or additional 10 years. So from tonight, we'd like to hear some feedback from you, the citizens. We, as a committee, will convene on Monday in the library to discuss the input that we've received, and deliver that to the Board of Selectmen, hopefully on the 15th. From that point, our intent is to hopefully have some direction, put out an RFP for architectural and engineering drawings, and get a construction manager on board to give us a guaranteed maximum price for the 2023 bond hearing, which would be scheduled January of 2023. Depending on project phasing vote, construction would begin in September or June of 2023. And then again, we would at that point start working on the fire department project, because we can't do them both at the same time. The fire department the police department has to be out before we can start the fire department work. So here are our options. Again, option 1, keep everybody at the South Main Street location. Option 2, new facility on North Main Street, the water tower location, with the fire department remaining as is, where they're located, with some upgrades. Option 3, PD goes to the substation site on 109. Fire department remains in its current location and is rehabilitated. Option 4, PD goes to Laner Street. We take down both buildings, build a new PD similar to the design on North Main Street, and we remodel the fire department in its current location. Or option 5, PD on Laner Street, remodel the MED building, tear down the community center, put an addition on, and keep the fire department where they're located with some additions. Relative to the charrette, there was a lot of discussion about Laner Street and the options for those buildings. It was evident that everybody appears to be impressed with the MED building. They like the look of it, and they'd like to keep that old school look. I think as well, it's a beautiful building. We've got to do something with it in the coming years, or we're going to lose it. With that said, I guess what I'd like to be able to do is open this up to you to speak to us, direct specific questions regarding the police department to the chief, specific questions to the regarding the fire department to Chief Zotti, and questions you may have for anybody else specifically on this panel. We'd love to be able to hear from you. So with that said, I will step back, and if people want to come up and speak, please come on up and we'll take your input. Nobody?
No, there we go. There we go.
I'm Mary Ellen Smallage. I live right next door to where you want to build on North Main Street. Woohoo! Yeah, so we're not really loving the idea. Our back bedrooms abut the stone wall, which will be right in your backyard if you decide to build from there. We've seen a ton of accidents right on that corner on the Piper Farm. I don't know what would be addressed with that curve. The motorcyclist that just lost his life just a little bit up from us 2 weeks ago. On top of that, a lot of wildlife crosses right there. I know if the police department's there, they won't be crossing anymore. But the noise that's going to be next to our home that we've lived in over 30 years, not even the sirens, not counting that, but the car doors, we hear everything on North Main Street to begin with. So it's a concern with that. We also like to sit outside at night, and with the lights that are going to be there, it's going to be not so wonderful anymore for our little town, our little quiet area of the woods. We do have a disabled son who lives with us full-time that deals with stress too, so that's just another little concern. And curious if the stone wall is going to be taken away, because that's kind of like the little niceness of our neighborhood around our border, our house. So I don't know if that's going to be addressed or not. These are the things that are important to me, not necessarily to anybody else. The wildlife going through there. Will also the electric department be done, not the electric department, the USA Electric people that have been there for a couple years with the smelly telephone poles, will they be out of there by then to even start some kind of construction? And our back bedrooms do abut the stone wall, so it's just going to be awful for us if it ends up there. So I don't know what can be done, if it was going to be a quieter situation, or what can be done with the pollution, the nightlife pollution and the noise pollution, if there's going to be any answers for that.
Sure. So if you want me to go,
Yeah.
Let's take these questions one at a time. You've got a handful here. So first off, I can't answer you if the rock wall would remain. I mean, I would like to see it remain. I think everybody would like to see it remain. But at the end of the day, it's going to be up to the architects and the design engineers and so forth and so on. The first thing I would like to say is no matter where we go, whether it's 109 East, whether it's Laner Street, whether we remain on site, whatever this group essentially decides, right? You folks are the people we work for, right? You're the citizens. We work for the citizens of Wolfeboro. So when you later go put your dots up on what options that you like, all of that will be taken into consideration by the Board of Selectmen. But no matter where we go, we are going to be good neighbors. So relative to noise pollution and light pollution, absolutely, we will take every measure that we can to mitigate the noise. Now, there are things we can do. We can put up, trees and vegetation that will absorb that sound. We're going to be dark skies compliant because that's important to the citizens of Wolfeboro. It's important to me. And that's the direction the town has decided to go many years ago. From that standpoint, yes, we'll be good neighbors, and fair or not on that. Relative to line of sights and traffic, maybe putting a police station there will slow the traffic down. I'm just spitballing on that one, but I'm thinking, you know, there'll be radar detectors going off, and typically when radar detectors go off, people slow down. We can mitigate line of sight issues. I'm not too concerned about that. Now, in terms of activity and noise, as the town manager said earlier, correctly, my officers are out on the road. All right. If they're coming into the station, it's because myself or the captain wants to see them. They're bringing in an arrested subject to be bailed. They're securing evidence. They're speaking to the prosecutor about a case. And when that task is completed, they're back out on the road. All of my cruisers, and we started a pivot on technology about 3 or 4 years ago, all of my cruisers are MDT capable, mobile data terminals. They connect to the station via Wi-Fi. They connect to all of our state, county, and federal partners via Wi-Fi, and they receive communications directly from dispatch digitally. So everything they need to do their jobs, they have right there in a little mini computer mounted in their cruisers. They're out on the road. They're speaking to citizens. They're taking calls for service. They're doing criminal investigations. They're not necessarily at the station. Now, yes, I do have police officers that do specific tasks at the police station, whether that's juvenile services, whether that's prosecution, whether that's detective and investigative work that occurs there. But generally, the patrol division, right, the people that you normally see in the blue uniforms, they're out on the road doing general patrol, anti-crime type patrol work. So in terms of the noise, I don't think you're not going to hear that. You're not going to see that. Sure, there may be emergencies where police officers in the station, the station has to empty itself because we have a very bad critical incident and it's all hands on deck. Sure, those things are going to happen. What was your other question? There was like 6 of them there. We got the rock wall, we got noise, light.
Dangerous corner, too.
Dangerous corner, yeah, I think that can be mitigated. I'm not too concerned about that. Now, admittedly, and to echo what the town manager said, listen, we heard you loud and clear with the vote, right? We heard you loud and clear. You've got some other options here, right? No one is hanging their hat on the North Main Street site. So, in fact, my particular favorite, if you're going to ask me what that is, I'm glad you asked that question.
Yeah, please. Where would you like?
Thank you for doing that. My particular favorite is the North Main Street, or correction, the
Oopsie, Freudian slip, yeah.
No, it's the 109 East site, and the reason I like that site is because the police department goes in what I consider essentially the geographic center of town. So we're close to our what I call Sector B, right? That actually we're essentially in Sector B. Right now we're sitting in Sector A. I have the town divided in sectors for patrol purposes. So, and when you think about it, right now the public safety building, right? We're in essentially South Wolfeboro. We're at the other end of town, right? There's 2/3 of the town that we are away from. So putting the police station in the geographic center of town, recognizing the fact that my officers are out in both sectors with modern technology, are actively patrolling, doing all the things that police officers should be doing, supposed to be doing, and only coming back to the station for specific tasks, I think it makes me feel good. It puts us in close proximity to the town line of Ossipee, the town line of Brookfield, Wakefield, and fairly close to town. We can get into the compact portion of town fairly quickly on Route 28. That's a major, what I call a major avenue of access, right? And so it makes sense to really put the police station there, in my opinion. Now, the other bird it kills, if you will, for lack of a better term, is that we get to tear down that substation site and we get to put up a apparatus bay for the fire department. And that's important for our citizens that live in Sector B because they need fire protection too, right? It shouldn't just be for the folks in South Wolfeboro, so to speak. And I'm not indicating that's all they serve. I'm just saying that it spreads out our apparatus and our equipment, which I think is a good thing, right? You always don't want to have your eggs in one basket. That's just my opinion. The Lana Street sites are interesting, and quite frankly, I'd be happy wherever the police department goes. But I think the same issues that you bring up in North Main Street, folks on Lana Street would probably have the same concerns, right? So again, we want to be good neighbors. We certainly want to serve the citizens of Wolfeboro, so we need your input. And that's really what this is all about. Did I address all your concerns?
Just one more question, though. I mean, if you've been on North Main Street in the summertime and you try to even get to town, you know, besides all the people that have to go down Friend Street just to avoid town, what would you be doing then if you left from North Main Street from a call? Like, that's...
So on North Main Street, that gives us, you know, so we do have access through Wamback Road or out by Lang Pond Road to 109A.
Traffic till you get to it.
Right. So North Main Street is not the location of the water tower site. The proposed site, in terms of distance, is actually fairly short. I mean, it's like 1.2 minutes. I mean, it's really short. But there are other points of access, even in the summer. And I know we're dealing with a town which is essentially, the compact portion of town is an isthmus, right? It's a narrow land bridge surrounded by two bodies of water. So it's a natural choke point. But we can get around that. No matter where we're located, we can get around that.
Okay, I would say that's pretty much everything I need.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Just to answer your question about the stone wall, I think we would do everything in our power to keep a stone wall in place without hesitation. So thank you. Well, and quite frankly, if that is the preferred site, you know, I think that you being the abutter will have a lot of insight and work with us and the architects and the engineers to come up with that design that would help work for you as well, if that's said to be the location we're going to go. Anybody else?
We like stone walls too.
Suzanne Ryan. It appears that we only have, in reality, the South Main Street, North Main Street, and Lerner Street. The others were all investigated and didn't pass muster. So my question is a financial question. And knowing Mr. Lohman, he's probably already done this. But if not, I know he knows how to. What could has anyone done a cost analysis for 20 years, say 20 years, 30 years, the savings or loss for running two buildings? And I think that needs to be looked at, two separate buildings, insured, heated, run, maintained, and somebody knows how to do that. I certainly don't, but I think it needs to be considered very seriously. And you will seldom hear me say I would spend more money, but I would vote to do option number one, even though it's more money. I think in general, people like that location. I'm speaking for myself, but it's a nice, visible location. And I think it's doable. And, but anyway, I think running the cost analysis is going to help answer that question about two buildings. I don't need that answer tonight.
Let me just deal with it. I can tell you that the maintenance costs and the upkeep costs and so forth will be drastically reduced from what they are now, because anything we put up there will be more efficient than what we've got. So I can't give you a number, but heat, light, all that stuff, those budgets will come down because the building will be better. I mean, that's just a given. I can't quantify it, but it'll be significantly better than what we're paying now for heat and light and maintenance, especially maintenance on the building. We're just kidding ourselves. We're doing more patching on that current building than we have in a number of years. So that'll all go away, and we'll have a living, breathing new facility that'll operate economically at a lower cost than what we're now paying. Don't ask me what the numbers are, because I don't know.
Mr. Lohman is indeed correct. So my office is on the second floor, and those windows are single pane glass. They're not insulated. That building is 50 years old, and it is what it is. That was the state of the art, I suppose, at that time when they built it. And there will be definitely cost savings. I remember there was a select member a few years ago, Paul O'Brien, who made the comment to me one time, we really have to get at the energy needs of this town, and he's absolutely right. And I've taken that to heart, and that was one of the reasons we went to hybrid vehicles. But we need to conserve energy where we can, and I think there'll be a great savings there with the new building, because you're using all new materials and new insulation and the latest technology, and it's just going to help us be more efficient, right? This is all about creating efficiencies. Relative to the South Main Street location, sure. We've been there 50 years, and we've been running operations out of the South Main Street site, but we have many of the same issues that the young lady before was speaking about. We have neighbor issues up there. We have choke point and congestion issues. So some of that will be alleviated if we move the police station out somewhere else. So just points to ponder, points to consider.
Suzanne, you make a good point. We will take that as an action item. And I think I can speak for the fire chief on this one. The apparatus bay is a block wall, no insulation.
Zero.
Therefore, the retention of the heat is not good. You open the apparatus bay doors at 40 below, 10 below, 10 above, all that heat is gone. You bring those apparatus in cold, they're a heat sink, they're a cold sink. So those items will be addressed to make it much more efficient. As well, the administrative portion of the existing building, every time there's a change in the temperature, they're making a call to the service technician, because the way that system is set up, it does not like the bounce between heating and cooling. Therefore, every time it changes from warm to cold, which you know what the shoulder seasons are like, the system just screws up, and it's an antiquated system that does not work well. So just the cost savings on the service work alone is going to be fairly substantial, but we will take that as an action item and get you some answers, Suzanne.
I just need to clarify, I wasn't trying to compare the old building to a new building as a cost analysis. Apples to apples, two new buildings, the fire department all retrofitted and new, the police department all new on Lerner Street. Compare those costs side by side and see what it's going to cost you to run two new buildings. That's all. Thank you.
Tony Fallon, 49 Center Street. I have a question on the existing site. One that I liked as far as trying to keep it there was what's called the early option one from like 2018. I know on the website it talked about, there's some disadvantages with regards to not being able to access the back, but is there any other information with regards to why that one was dropped? I kind of like that you could expand in the future with that one, and you could keep the existing building operational, but it doesn't seem like we're, considering that one now. So it's probably a good reason. So I was just wondering, if somebody could fill me in on that. Oh, okay.
So if I'm understanding your question correctly, Tony, the first option of all of the assets being located on South Main Street, that is still on the table as an option for you to be able to discuss tonight, and we will as well. It's up here in one of the formats. The drawback to it is in 2018, the estimated price of construction in 2021 was 12 million and some change, and if we do this in 2023, the estimated cost is 16 million and some change, and it limits potential growth. And there are some concerns about apparatus, fire apparatus, police cruisers, and people accessing the facility all using the same point of entry based on the existing design. That is a challenge that we have based on the existing site.
Thanks. The other thing I wanted to share, I was on the charrette that we talked about as a participant, I'm a local architect, so I participated in that. And there was something that came up that wasn't illustrated in the charrette, but it was actually specifically with regards to the Lanner Street site. That one other guy and I thought about of doing some kind of a structured parking that would go out over the existing parking lot with some buildings on top of it, retail apartments. And I was even thinking it might be kind of fun to continue at the bottom of Union Street, a pedestrian way that would go out at the level of Lanner Street, and then you'd have a pedestrian overlook of the water skiing and the rail trail and people running the remote control boats. So I'm kind of hoping we don't pursue Lanner Street just so that that possibility might be pursued. The other thing, I don't know if Chief Zadi would mind me asking him to voice his opinion on which one he likes the best, because I think it's pertinent. I thought it was kind of fun to hear the police chief, sharing his opinion. I certainly value what they think.
In general, I tend to agree with what Chief Rondo said, with the idea of a police station on the fire substation site, which frankly kills two birds with one stone for us. It solves the ongoing issue of having a fire substation in the more, quote, central part of town, and its resultant impact on insurance rates and that sort of thing. And obviously, I'm not a town planner, but I suspect if we all look at land availability and size of lots and so forth, future growth in the town, at least on the residential side, is going to be in that end of town. So having said that, if knowing what we know today, if I had to pick one, I would probably tend to that scenario, strictly selfishly for fire rescue reasons, if nothing else, because it addresses our concern with a substation, and it also renovates and adds on to the existing facility where we are. The advantage, you'll notice pretty much, other than the initial discussion of Filter Bed Road, which essentially more or less has been dropped, all these options have us staying exactly where we are. We frankly like that idea. It does not adversely impact our response time to the vast majority of our calls, which tend to be in what we loosely define as the compact area of town. But at the same time, a police facility in Wolfeboro Center with an attached or closely attached apparatus bay to allow us to continue to house an engine in that general location is a win-win from the fire rescue standpoint. I'd ask the deputy if he had any comment on that as well.
No, I don't. I agree with the chief.
The other advantage, sir, is that the designs, and no, please. going up to the podium, but the designs that we have already invested and paid for, we know will fit on that, what I call the 109 East site, right, the old fire substation. So that we already know that they're going to work there. So, you know, some of the other options, like, for example, the Lana Street locations that we spoke about, we haven't done any real studies, if you will, per se, to see if that will be functional. The other concern I have about Lana Street is, and I think you saw the town manager when he put it up there, we're going to have to take some parking spaces in the back there, right? And the town is already at a loss for parking, right? The town needs more parking spaces. I hate to think about doing that because some of that parking, I know in the summertime I patrol myself. I'm out and I go to all of the busy areas, and that Glen, what I call the Glen Street lot there, that's completely full, especially on the weekends. That's completely full. There's fishermen and folks water skiing and the remote control sailboating club. That place is packed. So I hate to think of any option where we're going to be taking spaces away from the general public, but we're going to need to, I need an impound lot. You know, we seize automobiles all the time for evidentiary purposes, albeit temporarily, but we need a place to secure those vehicles. The other thing that we do often is seize vehicles that are involved in either deadly motor vehicle crashes or there are negligent homicide or felony level DWI cases where there's serious bodily injury, and sometimes those vehicles will have to stay in an impound lot, you know, 1 or 2 years. The case we had a few years ago that occurred on Center Street out by where Sal's Advanced Automotive is, we had those vehicles almost 3 years. So, and we have to preserve that evidence.
Yeah, and it helps with the home insurance rates and everything out for people in that end of town. So, so anyways, I just kind of dove into this the last couple of days, and I was at first thinking try to keep everything on South Main, but I kind of agree with you guys. I did, for whatever it's worth, when I was just brainstorming this morning, I kind of looked at 1 Bay Street, the blue building across from Napa, and there's an outside chance that would work. There's obviously a lot.
There's a new owner of that building who's renovating it as we speak. I'm
Yes,
not
yeah.
sure it would be available, but
Yeah, it's full.
Well, there's a lot of wetland stuff too.
I was by there yesterday. He's got things in the window and so forth.
Yeah, but anyways, for what it's worth, I'd be going for the 109 site.
just to clarify too, the town manager made reference to it earlier, just in case people aren't familiar. What we're talking about when we talk about the substation is kind of a balancing act between, well, let me step back. If you look at your homeowner's insurance, you'll see references on there sometimes to, are you within 5 miles of a fire station? One of the primary reasons that station exists today is for the people in the Wolfeboro Center, North Wolfeboro area to be able to answer yes to that question. There's an engine there today. It's not a staff station, but we have our members who live in that area who will respond and respond in that apparatus to an incident. The trade-off that we talk about is keeping that station and any break or premium credit you may get on your insurance policy versus any tax rate increase for renovating or adding on to or rebuilding that station. Where's that line? And I can't say we know the answer to that. This scenario we've talked about here, putting a police station there with an apparatus bay, and frankly, we need an apparatus bay and access to a bathroom, and we get everything we need out there. Kind of works and makes that a moot point. We did pursue a preliminary design of a rebuild of the substation strictly for fire on that site, and as I recall, it was approximately $2.4 million, and that's on top of whatever else we had to do. So we sort of steered in another direction as to whether something else might make more sense financially.
Michael Hutter, Wolfeboro. A question regarding the 109 East site. Is there enough room on that site for an active PD and a fire department substation and potentially a cistern as well, all at the same time, all potentially active?
I can tell you from our perspective, it's a design function. You can typically buy and install a cistern for water purposes that can be driven on. It could be under a parking lot. Yeah. It would have a tower and I guess I can't say manhole, an access, that sort of thing. That's not unusual to have I believe they call it an H2 rating. You can drive heavy vehicles over it. So I don't know that that would drive space needs on the site, if you will, because you could locate it in a place where it can be, part of the parking lot, so to speak.
How about your apparatus bay and then the PD itself? Is there enough room on the site for both not to get in each other's way?
Believe so. We have, again, we haven't fleshed out the specifics of the layout. If we kind of plug in, and I'll defer to the chief, if we plug in the conceptual police building with either an addition for an apparatus bay or even a separate quote-unquote Butler building or Morton building, it works from a site size configuration standpoint. Obviously, we'd want to, if there's some coalescing tonight around that option, we'd want to flesh that out a little more. But the theoretical is, yes, it fits on the site. We'd have to have site distances and where you would place the buildings on the actual property figured out and so forth.
If that could be worked out, then I would be inclining towards that as an option, as well as Tony does. Before this, it seemed to me that none of the options presented was really ideal, and what I'd like to do would be what Suzanne suggested, and that was stay where we are and not be pound foolish and penny wise and pay for it over time, have a proper facility. But if the substation could be brought up to scale, if the cistern could be included, which is something that was desirable back in 2019 when we did the master plan survey, and if the PD could be located there, none of them got in each other's way, and the chief seems to feel that's an ideal location, and I tend to agree with Jim that that's where the future growth in the town is likely to be located, because that's the only area where there is land that's sort of affordable, then that might be the good option. One last question for the chief. You said on the North Main Street site that line of sight issue could be solved.
Could be mitigated.
Could be mitigated.
Yeah.
I remember years ago I nearly ran into a moose coming around that corner, admittedly 3 in the morning, but nonetheless, it is a tough corner. Can you describe how it might be mitigated so it would work?
Yeah, I think one of the things you do is you angle the building and the access, the points to go straight on and bleed on to the road. So there are ways to soften that curve so you're not having to deal with the issues that you're talking about. So I think those issues can be mitigated. And again, remember that my officers generally are out on the road already. So they're not they're not screaming out of the station to get to a bank robbery, for example. They're probably already there, right? They're in the neighborhoods.
So just as a point of information for everybody, unlike the fire department, you don't have to stage from the PD to get someplace. You're already out in the field moving around.
That's correct.
Can respond from a field location.
That's correct. Where you tend to have a tendency to see the officers together is usually during shift change, right? Very common. So, we run a bunch of different shifts. We have some overlapping shifts. And so you got officers coming in, going out. You have, the corporals and the sergeants doing their shift inspections and their roll call, so to speak, on making sure those tasks are completed. And then same thing with dispatch, right? So yeah, you do have there's points in times where there's a lot of personnel, but those are usually only, 5, 10, 15 minutes tops, and everybody's working their way out to do whatever they're supposed to do. And just by way of example, my officers regardless of what investigations or activity that they're doing, they're given a list of tasks every day by their corporals and their sergeants, directed patrol tasks or follow-up on investigations or execution of arrest warrants or whatever the case may be. So, they have a list of tasks they're out doing, and so they're anxious to get out on the road and get these tasks, checked off the to-do list, so to speak. Getting back to your earlier question, I absolutely believe that there's enough room for a fire apparatus bay or two, in addition to the police department. I don't see that as an issue at all. Number two, when that fire siren goes off, these guys are in charge, and we support them. So in terms of activity going on, there shouldn't be a lot of activity from the police side, because again, my officers are already out on the road, but my officers know to give way to the fire trucks because they're trying to get to the scene to save somebody's life or put out a fire or do some other important task. Okay. So I'm not seeing that as an issue.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mike.
If I may, Mike, just to clarify something.
Yeah, Bob.
The Route 109 site at this point is 1.23 acres. The South Main Street facility where they are now is 1.92. So if you think about a full-blown fire department, police department on 1.92 vis-a-vis a police department and a couple of apparatus bays or one apparatus bay, I don't see a problem with a fit.
Okay. Thank you, Bob.
Yep.
The other thing too, Mike, one last comment is that, boy, that 109 East side is a lot less expensive. It's a lot less expensive.
Yeah, the 109 East site, it's deep and narrow. It's 375 feet deep by 180 feet wide. So we should be able to easily accommodate a police facility which is going to be about 100 by 70, and then an apparatus bay of 30 by 80 onto that, but with a cistern probably under the facility so they can access it during from inside. And a cistern's got to be there anyways for the sprinkler system for that building. So all of those things can be tied together. So I think we can make that happen, Mike. That's the way we go.
As far as growth up in the woods, up in the mountain there, for 20 years I've seen one house built. This last 6 months or a year, 5 houses have gone in. It's really, people are selling off their land. They need the money to pay the taxes, but or something. But before you close, Mr. Town Manager, would you please give us a dollar figure on these options that look viable so I can list them on my page? I've got the option 1 at 16.2. Option 2 I'm not clear on. Is it $6,600,000 just for the building, or is it an additional 10.8 for the remodel of a fire department and the police department? Do we add those two together?
That is those two added together. So the 10 million is
the number.
Is the number for the North Main Street site and the phase 1 of the fire department rebuild. Yes, so that's.
Thank you. And then the other thing is, we have to remember that Lerner Street has no feasibility study done yet, and it has no cost estimates yet. And the elephant in the room for Lerner Street electric building area is DES is watching it. We have test pits there. It's been monitored for years. It's going to be monitored for more years. Once we start digging around in there, as I say, we don't know what we'll run into, and that needs to be looked at before we put the backhoe in there.
Those are very good points, Suzanne, and those are accurate.
Anybody else got any input? Come on up.
Hi, everyone. Stephanie, Wolfeboro. My question is just if there is any cost estimates on phase 2 for the fire department. Obviously, we've looked at phase 1, we've estimated that out, but we don't want to leave you guys hanging with phase 2. So I'm kind of curious what that cost estimate might look like.
Yes, I believe we have the specifics. The intent, as I understand it, would be phase 1 would somewhat closely follow the police project if we go that route. Phase 2, as I understand it, 2029-ish, 2030, with, as I understand it, the town's debt load has started to drop at that point due to previous votes and so forth. But as I recall, that was sitting at, geez, we just looked at it this morning, and I apologize for not having my hand right on it. But, it's here.
I'm wondering if we look
There
at
it
this
is.
109
Both projects.
site, if that's affects what that phase 2 cost would be, because
I'm not going to lie to you, I'm having trouble even with my bifocals reading.
I
the
may be able to
slide.
answer that
I
question.
would defer to Jim if he's got a better copy of it.
Chief Zadi, while you're looking at it, I think I can answer that other question.
my second question, sure.
Yeah, the substation site really has nothing to do with phase 2.
Okay. I was wondering if it was part of that or not.
Correct, that's at the South Main Street site,
Yeah.
Phase 2.
Yeah.
When you mention phase 2, you're talking about the additional apparatus bay being built at the existing public safety building, correct? Yeah. So interestingly enough, I was going
Phase
through
1.
final review today on putting this together when the chief told me that I had Chief Rondo's email wrong and a couple other things.
Yeah, we
after
had
these
that.
were all printed.
I may have it here.
And I was looking at the proposal, and the email that we received about a year ago said this is for phase 1 and phase 2. And when I read the breakdown, it didn't have the price for phase 2. So I reached out to the chief. He's like, I don't have it. So we reached out to the architect. Phase 2, that second apparatus bay, is about $4 million.
Yeah.
That would happen a couple years down the road
Yeah.
when some debt service begins to fall off and whatnot. So, and again, we literally just stumbled upon that today. So that was a number that we were not, quite frankly, aware of because the architect hadn't sent it to us yet.
Right. And as I understand it, the way they did that was based on their projection of 2028 or 29 construction costs. So obviously, the way things are changing. But that was the idea, was to spread that out a little bit and at the same time solve the immediate problems in the building on South Main Street.
So I guess we've heard from most everybody. When you came in, you received a small packet, and you received some yard sale tags. On each one of the easels, it has the various options, and it talks briefly about the various options. What we'd like you to do is to go through each of the options that are on the easels and put the $1 sticker on your preferred option, and then number 5 on your least preferred. We will be around, standing around the easels to be able to answer any questions you may have. Any questions about our yard sale stickers to determine what is the preferred option?
The dollar signs don't mean anything. It's 1 through 5.
It costs more than $1 if you like it.
We were working with these last night as well, and Mr. Lohman made a comment, and I pulled one of the stickers off and put on him that said, "Make an offer." So if you could go ahead and work around. They're on these easels. They're on the tables. The options are laid out. Just put your sticker on the appropriate one, and you can either A, leave at that point, or B, you can stick around and ask us questions. And just to tie up the loose ends again. Monday, this committee's meeting at the library to discuss what happened tonight. We're hopeful to bring that to the Board of Selectmen for the 15th. Final RFP for architect construction management by the end of the month. Hopefully have a plan delivered to the Capital Improvement Committee for September. Bond hearing in January, and you, the voters, will decide, and then we hope to mobilize. If you have questions, you can contact myself, you can contact the fire chief, or you can contact Chief Rondo. Our emails are all there, and we'd love to hear your input. Same thing from people in TV land who are watching this. We'd like to have your input as well. With that said, if you want to go ahead and pick your favorite and least favorite and ask us any questions, we're here to help you.
109.
Yeah, I know.